back to the Functional Herbal Medicine Podcast. We are your hosts, Kristin and David. Today we are talking about how to care for your liver and gallbladder. Your liver is one of your main detox organs. It's responsible for a massive amount of metabolic functions. It's generally one of the cornerstones of our herbal treatments, and I think it's probably a pretty rare occasion that I don't consider someone's liver support in their whole protocol. It's kind of one of those things that's connected to everything, and when your liver works better, everything works better. So at the time of this recording, we're early spring, and in traditional Chinese medicine, they associate springtime with the liver. So as the weather changes and our bodies adjust, you might actually be feeling more of your liver symptoms a little extra during this time, and we're going to share about what those are. Today we're going to share all about what your liver does and all of its amazing functions. We're going to talk about how it works and why it's so important to regularly support it, and why that also doesn't necessarily mean like detoxing in the conventional sense. So like a lot of people typically think of like cleanses and fasting and juice diets or coffee enemas even when it comes to detoxing, but we'll share today about what liver support can really look like outside of detoxification. And we're also going to talk about all the signs and symptoms that tell you it is time to do some liver support. And of course, we're going to talk about what types of things you can be doing in order to support your liver, including some herbs. So let's get started maybe on, let's start on the functions of the liver. Do you want to start us off with all of the incredible functions that our liver performs each day?
Yeah, definitely. I won't do all 250 because that would be the whole podcast, but I'll go over a few. We're just highlighting here. We're inside of each category is probably going to be other things that the liver is doing. But as Kristin mentioned, like 250 plus functions, and that's probably just what they know. So other aspects the liver takes care of that we might not consider in the process of just every day-to-day life. You know, people are talking about like blood sugar regulation or, you know, carbohydrate and fats and proteins, how we think of the digestive tract. So the liver is responsible for the metabolism of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. It also stores carbohydrates. It also helps assemble and move around amino acids that we need to use in metabolism. So I mentioned blood sugar regulation. It's responsible for cholesterol in our body. So a misconception that comes from the Western pharmaceutical model is that we need to avoid cholesterol in our diet because that has an impact on our body. And to some extent maybe, but most of our cholesterol is made inside our body. They say 80%. So 80% of our cholesterol is made by our liver. We know it produces bile. That's kind of what gives our bowel movements that dark brown color. That's bile. Also stores vitamins. So B vitamins, vitamin A, as I mentioned, carbohydrates and proteins, and then of course detoxification. And in the path of detoxification, there's a whole aspect of inflammation control that's it's responsible for. And ultimately, if we, like Kristin mentioned, almost always the liver is addressed in like a daily tonic formula, and this can be from everything from like mental health to inflammation to blood sugar regulation.
Thank you for that. That's an awesome overview. So, it's like very wide and varied, many functions. So like recycling of hormones contains nutrients. It recycles red blood cells and iron and hormones. Lots of different functions there. One of the main ones, of course, is neutralizing toxic substances in the body. And this includes things like stuff in our environment or that we ingest, or the food, pesticides that are on the food. Supplements is a big one. Of course, drugs are metabolized by the liver. Also includes things in our environment. So, like I said, internal environment is what I meant. So our hormones and even like old antibodies are processed by the liver. Inflammatory agents like histamine. The liver has its own immune cells, so it plays a large role in like both the systemic and local immune system, and of course inflammation in the body. I think one really cool thing about the liver, which is actually generally a common misconception, which is people think the liver is a filter, and it's not really a filter in the sense of like how your water filters work, of like collecting the junk and just pulling it out and holding on to it. The liver actually transforms stuff. So it will add on molecules or take molecules away in order to neutralize substances and make them safe for processing and to be able to be removed through the gut or be removed through the kidneys. So things aren't actually stored, but through these processes, the liver can kind of get gunked up and whatever. So how it works is phase 1, and it has phase 1 and phase 2, although some people say 3 sequential phases, although I think the third one is really just about elimination. Phase, do you want to start us off with the phases, or do you want me to go through those?
Yeah, totally go through them. I have one thought on it, so you go through it, and then, if you don't touch on it, I'll bring it up.
Okay. So phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 is known as the functionalization phase. It works through this enzyme pathway called the cytochrome P450 pathway, which is actually a collection of 50 or so different enzymes, though only a handful of those actually do the majority of the work. So during phase 1, there's usually one of 2 outcomes. Either some things can be actually directly neutralized by phase 1, but most are modified into a different kind of form that is then funneled into phase 2. And phase 2 is called the conjugation phase. There's 6 different enzyme pathways that things can generally be processed through. These pathways will neutralize whatever substance that was made through phase 1. And this is where like a lot of glutathione is used, as well. This is where methylation occurs, which maybe you've heard of. A lot of people talk about this pathway in the detoxing world. It's associated with like people with the NTHFR gene mutation are poor methylators and therefore have a hard time detoxing. Although I'll argue that it's not actually genetic; it's nutrient based. And methylation is one of the 6 pathways that things can follow. Each of these pathways work on different kinds of compounds, and they generally work by adding a molecule to that intermediate compound from phase 1, which makes it like less reactive and less toxic, more water soluble, and more able to be processed and excreted by the body safely. And then, like I mentioned before, phase 3 is just the transportation of those metabolic wastes out of the body. Either primarily through like the bile in the gut or through the kidneys. And one interesting thing to note about like that phase 1 is that one major way that it works is through oxidation. So that means that it's adding on a compound, and the compound the intermediate compound that it creates is actually a more reactive compound. And so if it's not funneled through phase 2 properly, then things can essentially like react within the liver and cause free radical damage, and eventually, if that happens enough, leading to fatty liver disease. So each of these phases need to be in balance. Like we need to have healthy and functioning phase 1. We also need to have healthy and functioning phase 2. Otherwise, we have things that get stuck along the way. So a normal and healthy functioning liver a normal healthy functioning system will take stuff out of the gut. It gets shuttled to the liver. The phase 1 will do all of its metabolic processing and will put things onto phase 2. Phase 2 will do all of the metabolic processing, and those things will then be safe to excrete. In an unhealthy system, a lot of that breaks down. So you're probably in an unhealthy system. You have some type of dysbiosis, let's say, so there's extra toxins in the gut, or you have a high toxin load and there's just tons of stuff that's being pulled from the gut to the liver. So in an unhealthy system, phase 1 will be low, and that will leave a ton of unconjugated or unaltered substances just circulating in the body. So that can be drugs, that can be hormones, it can be inflammatory metabolites. So basically, the less your phase 1 works, the more sensitive you'll be to things like alcohol and caffeine, smells in your environment. So like the less your phase 1 works, the more sensitive you'll be to stuff. And then with phase 2, if that's not working well, then you get a lot of free radical damage and buildup in the liver, and that can eventually lead to like liver cell damage and then eventually fatty liver. And then of course, again, it's like if phase 2 is not working, I mean, probably you will also have then like your phase 1 will probably not also be optimal, which just means like you're going to have tons of stuff circulating in your system for much longer than it should be. So yeah, we need each of these phases working kind of in balance with each other. And healing comes in the same sense. So when we stimulate the liver to support it in different ways, we need to be stimulating both phase 1 and phase 2, or we could potentially be causing larger problems.
That's usually what we see. It's usually one or the other, actually, what we see in the clinic. So quite often people will go on a detoxing method, and when they go into a cleansing type diet, cleansing diets are depleting diets. So quite often there's not a lot of extra nutrients that come through with the food. So whether people are doing juice fasts or pure veggie carbohydrate fasts and like limiting fats and proteins, you're also limiting a lot of the extra nutrients that the liver uses to help with detoxification. So your body can sustain that for a while. This is all the stuff Chris is just talking about, just kind of giving the example of what we see in the clinic, which is people will go in these hardcore detoxing, and what you'll ultimately see long term is like excess oxidation in the body. So like that'll be skin oxidation, you'll have oxidation in liver, as she mentioned, you'll see more inflammation in this process because ultimately the liver is only doing the first phase and the second phase isn't being supported with, she mentioned the methylation pathway, there's the amino acid pathway, there's the glucose pathway. So those are two other ones. So if you're not getting these molecules, these nutrients to support that, you're not going to detoxify. And then we have the other pathway, which is what I think in my nutrition school it was, they called it the pathological detoxifier, in the sense like they're able to, like their liver's so overburdened with underactive phase 1 that they're just constantly having sensitivities to caffeine and alcohol, and it's never going beyond that oxidation phase. It's just stuck right there. So yeah, very cool, and that's exactly what we see going through the clinic.
Mm-hmm. So you bring up a super important point, which is that the liver needs a massive amount of nutrients in order to function. So like going on your fast, yeah, it'll give your body a break, but it doesn't do anything for actually getting the liver the nutrients it needs in order to function. And these nutrients look like B vitamins, folic acid, glutathione. Antioxidants are really important, so vitamin A, C, E. Minerals are hugely important, selenium, magnesium, amino acids. So all of these things are essential in part of the process. So when you don't have enough, your liver won't be able to create the enzymes it needs to do all of its functions. So it will then, in essence, get more and more backed up because it can't actually do the processing. And of course, sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to add on to what you're saying, and what we'll also see is it's also similar in when a woman is pregnant with a baby. If the body isn't getting the nutrients it needs from its environment, it draws the nutrients off the body. So in a sense, it starts kind of wasting away the body to get the nutrients it needs. And obviously, we're not going to have enough and all of everything we need for that phase 2, but it will start being a catabolic process and start breaking down the body to provide the nutrients it needs, which in the long term leads to more oxidation, more burden, more stress, and then more need for like nourishing and rebuilding. Sorry to cut you off on that. I just want to add in there.
No, that's all good. I love that point. I think that's one of the, that's one of the points that I want people to take home, is that like sometimes when we do these things, we actually are asking, we're demanding the body to actually donate nutrients from our tissues. So it's like we end up creating a breakdown of our body tissues when we try and do these healthy things. So we think we're doing something good, but ultimately we're breaking down our tissues, and a lot of like our minerals, it'll come from our bones and these kinds of things. So it's like to create a healthier body, we need to really nourish it and keep those nutrients and minerals inside the tissues. And so along with nutrients, the liver also needs a ton of metabolic energy in order to function. So if you have low metabolic health or mitochondrial dysfunction, your phase 2 pathway in particular will slow. So again, you'll get this buildup of free radicals. So and that kind of circles back to the nutrition component. I think a lot of us were kind of programmed that it's like, to lose weight, you cut carbs and you exercise more, or you eat less and move more, and essentially we are going to be damaging our metabolism if we continue that for a very extended period of time. I think that's a lot of people, that's how they reflexively eat. It's like when they want to do something, when they want to feel like they're doing something healthier, they cut carbs, they eat less, they move more. And so this will actually slow the metabolism, slow the liver down, and can actually result in weight gain. So again, when you're trying to do something healthy, make sure it's the right things, because you can be digging yourself into this metabolic hole, essentially. So make sure you're nourishing the body properly, getting your nutrient-dense foods in. So we've talked a lot about the liver, but what about the gallbladder? What are your thoughts? Maybe if you want to share a little bit about the role of the gallbladder. And this is something I see, like I've seen so many adults that have had their gallbladder removed. I'm constantly surprised by the amount of adults that have had their gallbladders taken out. So yeah, what about the gallbladder?
Yeah, an organ that the Western conventional model sees as like, not necessary. It's there, it does a function, but you can live without it, kind of thing. Ultimately, it stores bile, so it's keeping all that bile and then releasing it to help metabolize fats and break them down, which also helps with ultimately like fat-soluble vitamins being absorbed properly and cleared out, oxidation of fats in the body. So this would be one drawback of somebody eating too much fats or the wrong kind of fats, is it goes through the body, they will oxidize, and if you don't have a healthy functioning liver and gallbladder, those fats will oxidize in your body, leading to you needing more antioxidants, more nutrient support. But yeah, I mean, I've done some research on the gallbladder too, and it is quite common that it's just pulled out when there's a little bit of a scare or a hiccup. They're just like, oh, we'll resolve this problem by taking it out, versus addressing the underlying driving factors. What's causing the gallbladder to be acting up, and I think it's mostly philosophical, or like a way of thinking. So if you take like functional medicine and then you take the conventional medicine model tends to put everything in the category of genetics. They try to say it's a genetic abnormality. Oh, your mother had a bad gallbladder, that's why you have a bad gallbladder. And functional medicine is more epigenetic, which is like they assume and say science proves that 98% of all disease is actually epigenetic, caused by our environments. And so if you have a philosophy in that regard, if it's just genetic, then there's no solutions to it other than like you're born with an abnormal gene that causes this problem, versus a functional medicine or holistic perspective, which is like there's something driving that gallbladder issue up. That the reason the gallbladder is having that problem is not because of something out of your control. It's actually most likely in your control to change that pattern. And yeah, I mean, it's all the way down to these chat groups and these forums. So I went to a gallbladder chat group forum where they're talking about like things that they do for their health and their gallbladder. And there was literally nothing on there about nutrition, diet, lifestyle. It was more just talking about my gallbladder hurts. I can't wait till I get it pulled out. And that's a whole mindset in the West of just like, I don't want to figure out what's causing it, just take it out and be done with it.
Totally. I'll argue that there are 0 unessential organs. I think that we are born with all
Absolutely.
of the organs that we need.
Yep.
So I think, yeah, it's kind of crazy that we just yanked the gallbladder out at first sign of issues. I have one client who, she's in her like early 60s now, but she had her gallbladder removed when she was 19 years old. So it was like at the first sign of anything, they pulled it out. And yeah, it seems to be one of like a very common thing, but it does not heal the root cause. So yes, it will. It'll get rid of those gallbladder symptoms because you don't have a gallbladder to act up anymore. But essentially, you're just hiding your symptoms because taking your gallbladder doesn't heal your liver. It doesn't thin out the bile. It doesn't produce more enzymes, right? It's just hiding it for like temporarily. And most people I talk to who have had their gallbladder out tell me that their gut health has never been the same since. So they have all sorts of problems with like their bowel movements will be totally irregular, or they'll have like a lot of kind of congestion in their gut, like gas and bloating, and things just don't seem to work as well anymore. It seems to end up with like gut infections. And it's like definitely a lot of people who I've seen that have had their gallbladders out like years and years ago. They're now struggling with immune stuff. So it's like they're dealing with constant allergies and constant migraines and like constant gut stuff. So there seems to be this like slow and steady progression where like eventually like it's helpful at first because you don't have the gallbladder to cause the symptoms, but eventually it can catch up with you because that the bile's still thick, so you can actually start developing stones in your liver then, and that will harbor infection. Like you'll get parasites and other things in your liver. It affects the immune cells, so then your body can't actually tolerate the other immune burden on like the rest of the body. And of course, if your gut is getting all messed up from this, then your immune system will take a hit as well because they're so connected. So I think while you don't need it to live, you do need it to thrive. And so if you still have your gallbladder, then it is definitely worth trying to hold on to it. If you don't, then like you definitely gotta support your liver and do all the things that help thin out that bile and keep it moving so that you don't have larger problems down the road. So maybe before we get into like exactly what that will look like of like taking care of your liver and gallbladder so that you don't lose your gallbladder, let's maybe look at what an overburdened liver actually looks like, so that you who are listening, you can start to figure out how much you need to support your liver. I'm not going to say if you need to, because probably you do, but like as we kind of go through these symptoms, and you're thinking, oh yeah, this is me, this is a good sign for you to start supporting your liver a little bit. So what are some of the first, like in clinic, David, when you see people, what are like the things that you're like, oh yeah, that needs liver support?
Almost always the most common is constipation. I would say that's one of the main ones that comes through. Dysbiosis type symptoms, so gas and bloating, that is another sign for us that there's something. I mean, it can go higher. It doesn't necessarily mean the liver, but it immediately puts a flag in my mind. Liver. It could be gastric juices, acid production in the stomach. That's the starting of the cascade. However, we would still address the liver. So I would say constipation is like the primary thing we see. And then when it gets a little bit in the later stages, so we'll talk about some of like those the things that are causing the congested liver later, but one of them is like excess pharmaceuticals. So we have tons of clients that take more than 2 or 3 pharmaceuticals, and you can kind of see that the body's getting this over toxicity, and it leads to diarrhea. Almost like constipation is like everything slowing down, you can tell it's congested. Diarrhea is like there's toxins we need to clear out, let's move. And so that's like the later stages, I would say, of like an overburdened liver. So again, we won't paint this as like constipation means you have severe liver congestion, or diarrhea means you have severe liver congestion. That's one aspect of the whole intake we would do to see like what's causing this. Other things like headaches are quite common when there's liver issues, fatigue. See what else is on our list that I see most commonly. I mentioned dysbiosis. The cholesterol one, that's been coming through recently. We've had multiple clients recently that have super high cholesterol, and the doctors want to put them on these strong medications, and they want to go a different route. And of course, they all tell me that they're changing their diet. They're avoiding all red meat, and first thing we're going to these herbs that we'll talk about later that are protecting the liver and ultimately addressing cholesterol and, in a sense, fatty liver disease.
So you said something earlier that I think is really interesting of like, just because you have constipation does not mean you have severe liver disease. And I think as we go through this list of what signs tell you your liver needs support, it's like this could be from if you have one of these symptoms, you probably need a little bit of support, and that doesn't necessarily mean like hardcore detoxing, but doing gentle things that support your liver. If you have 10 of these symptoms, again, I wouldn't necessarily go in and push that liver, because it just needs that much more gentle support. Like it needs nourishing, restoring, right? It needs building up to be able to function better. So if you have 10 of these symptoms, it's like it's a sign that your liver is just that much more congested. Take this with a grain of salt, in the sense of like, don't go out and panic. There's gentle things, and the best thing is preventative with this. So if constipation is your one sign and symptom, then it's a good sign that you're starting early, and you can do a lot of gentle stuff to support yourself and get yourself back into balance pretty quickly. So some.
I thought you were going to say.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say. I thought you were going to say take it with a grain of bile salts. It's a joke. Almost.
That's a good one. Take it with a grain of bile salts. That's a good point. If you have no gallbladder, definitely take it with a grain of bile salts. Some of the other stuff that I think that tells me like liver support is really needed. Nausea, blood sugar problems, hormonal problems. If you're getting severe PMS, you need some liver support. Reduced tolerance to stuff like we talked about, if that phase 1 is low. If you're really sensitive to alcohol, caffeine, smells, different foods, even exercise. If you cannot exercise, if you feel like if you get the flu after you exercise kind of thing, it's called post-exertional malaise. And so you have a hardcore exercise, and then the next day you feel like really quite sick. This is a sign that your liver needs some more support. We're in springtime, so people are gearing up for allergies. That's a good sign your liver needs some support. Here, I think you mentioned headaches, but like brain fog and fatigue and all these types of things are tending towards liver needing support. And of course, this could be a symptom of a larger condition. So like we can do liver support on its own, or we can do liver support as part of a larger protocol, which seems to be like the common thing. People don't necessarily come in saying, I need help with my liver. Some people do because they kind of know, but a lot of people are coming in saying, oh, I have PMS, and then we go, okay, well, you need some liver support. Anything else there? Oh, I guess some clinical signs that we see that I think are good for people to look out for is if you have like light colored stools, if they tend to be kind of like gray or like a little bit yellowy, then that's a good sign that you are not producing bile. If they're fatty and floating, again, you're not digesting fats well. Anything else you can think of?
Definitely. I wanted to point out the one that we have under severe, which is brown urine and jaundice. Like these are like later stages, right? These are where it's showing the liver's really backing up. But I'll share a clinical experience. I had a client walk through the dispensary. She came in and she's like, "Do you carry milk thistle?" I'm like, "Yeah, we carry milk thistle." And I'm like, "If you're okay, do you mind if I ask what we're using it for?" And she's like, "Yeah, I've been getting headaches, and I read on the internet that milk thistle is good for headaches." I'm like, depending on the type of headache, like liver can cause headaches if the liver is overburdened. So I started asking more of these clinical questions, right? And comes to find out, I ask her, like, "How is your urine?" And she's like, "My urine is like dark brown, like almost black." So that's how dark brown she said it was. I was like, "Have you gone to the doctor and checked with the doctor about this?" She's like, "Yeah, I went to the doctor. I went to the walk-in clinic. I told him I was having headaches, and I was like, I need support with headaches, and I was looking at a milk thistle, and so he gave me a migraine medication, and I said, I would highly recommend you go back to the walk-in clinic, and instead of saying you have headaches, tell them your urine is dark brown, because you need to like have this looked at and addressed, because that's like a later stage sign of liver disease for us. Now, liver disease, like that's an all-encompassing term for many different things that can be going on wrong with the liver. That could be hepatitis, that could be fatty liver disease, it could be cirrhosis, like it could be all different kinds of things. But when your urine is brown, that's like bilirubin backing up, and then it's needing to be excreted, and it goes through the kidneys, and that's a sign that the liver is really toxic. Something's going wrong. But that's kind of a shortfall coming from the doctor, because when he hears migraine, the only things about is headaches, and instead of getting to that root cause, it took a holistic clinic to kind of ask more questions of like urine and stools and all that stuff to find out that this person needs to not address headaches, they need to address their liver ultimately.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. As you were talking, I thought of another sneaky symptom, which is like right-sided pain. And it can be like in your neck and in your shoulder. And this is what we call referred pain. It is actually pain coming from the liver and gallbladder, but because of the way that our nerves reach those areas, we don't have a lot of sensory nerves there. We have more stuff going like to versus from, so we don't necessarily feel like we can't feel ourselves digesting, we can't feel our liver working, because we don't have the sensory nerves there. But when there's a large problem there, the sensory nerves that are around that area will start to feel it. So you'll actually start to feel like achiness up in the right shoulder or in your neck. You might have a hard time breathing, or like when you do breathe in, you'll feel kind of like congestion, like a tightness or congestion around that right side. And this can be, so sharper pains tend to be more like gallstone related. But you can get like achiness that can just last a really long time. That is a sign of fatty liver. I've heard of like a lot of women who have been on something like birth control for a long time that is really taxing on your liver, and it's like, it's something you take every day for 8 to 10 years. Some people are on it for that long, even longer. And like as people come off it, start to figure out their health a little bit, it's like they'll be like, oh, like I don't understand why this like achiness in the right side, and it ends up coming down to like it's actually a liver thing, where people are searching for pain relief, but it's actually rooted in your liver. So if you have like right-sided chronic pain, something to consider as well, looking into your liver health. So maybe we can talk now about like what does it mean, like when the liver is overburdened, what is happening? I know we talked a little bit about phase 1 and phase 2 getting like out of balance and out of whack, but what is actually happening, and what sorts of things contribute to liver congestion?
Yeah, I'll go over just kind of, we have our list, but I'll go over the common things that I see the most, which is diet is a big component. So refined sugar, oils, processed oils, specifically vegetable oils. Like the body doesn't handle this stuff very well. I would actually probably say sugar has, this is my opinion, not scientific proof, but I would say sugar plays a bigger role in like fatty liver disease and overall liver dysfunction than cholesterol that comes from meat. I think cholesterol from meat can have its own input, but I would say sugar has the bigger driving force. Like if you look at sugar, it's literally, I don't want to get too crazy down the rabbit hole. It's not literally, sugar is lacking all of the cofactors that come with it. So all of the foods that we eat tend to provide the cofactors we need to help digest it. Sugar is barren. It doesn't have that. It's just like pure sweetness. So when it enters the body, it draws nutrients from the body. It's just going to take from everywhere. And what's one of the main places in our body that stores and holds nutrients and processes nutrients is the liver. So the liver, I would say sugar is probably one of the main driving factors for liver issues and complaints. Medications is going to be another one that we see really often. And then I think some of the more subtle and not able to observe is like our chronic pollution in our environment around us. So like what's in our house, what's in our, the scent in our garbage can bags, all these little things just add up over time. And our environment is playing a big role. And those would be, I would say, the big three ones. Alcohol would be another one.
Totally. Really anything that increases the load on the liver, right? So like what does overburden mean? We're talking about like the liver not being able to keep up with the demands. So you've got more things to process than it can process. Your liver becomes kind of like a bottleneck there, right? So either like high toxic load, low enzymes, or an imbalance of the bases. And you brought up sugar, and I think an important one to note there is fructose. It's not regulated by insulin, but it'll still shift your blood sugar, and it's solely metabolized by the liver. So fructose can be a big driver of fatty liver, and it's in everything packaged as high fructose corn syrup. So that's one to keep a lookout for in your labels. And then we've talked about some of this stuff before. Low nutrients. All right, our liver is needing a lot of nutrients to function, but this can also include low absorption of nutrients. So if you're having an inflamed gut, or you have some other kind of processes that aren't working as optimally. So for example, if you have low stomach acid, you're also not going to be breaking down the nutrients well, and will have a difficult time absorbing them. If you have too much inflammation in the gut, if you don't have good mucosal lining, these types of things can alter your ability to absorb, and then even if you are eating them, those nutrients can't necessarily get to where they need to go. So making sure that you're taking really bioavailable foods. One of my favorite is actually just taking liver. You can take liver supplements in a desiccated form, or you can just take eat liver. You can either eat it raw, I know a lot of people freeze it, chop it into little cubes and freeze it, and then kind of swallow those like pills, or you can take the desiccated supplements, and those you don't have to deal with the taste, but they're highly bioavailable, have tons of nutrients in them. And the cool thing is, it's whatever is concentrated in that cow's liver is everything that liver needs. So that means that it's everything that your liver needs. So that's a cool way to support it. One thing that I think people forget is supplements. They're processed exactly the same way that drugs are, and it's you mentioned this before, is when we eat foods, it comes with different cofactors. You get the zinc in the food, but it's also with copper and magnesium and different nutrients and whatever to balance it out. It's like taking, getting zinc in food is different than taking like a zinc supplement. That zinc supplement has to be metabolized through the liver because the body is not used to getting this like huge hit of zinc. So these types of things have to be metabolized through the liver, and therefore will then like demand those nutrients and demand those the enzymes. Another one that is a cornerstone of many conditions, but high stress. High stress will burn through your nutrients faster, which means if they're not available for your liver to use, and also not being in rest and digest will cause it'll cause up a backup of bile because you're not secreting into the digestive system when you're in survival mode all the time. You need to be in your parasympathetic rest and digest in order to secrete those enzymes into the digestive system and break down those foods. So if they're just kind of stuck in the gallbladder, it's still got one, that it will congeal in there. So it is kind of like a move it or lose it situation where if you aren't eating any fats, like if you eat a zero fat diet or you're not eating enough, where you're not signaling that squeezing of the gallbladder to let go of the bile, then that stuff, because the gallbladder does concentrate stuff in there. So if you're not actually squeezing it and emptying it regularly, then that can be a cause of gallstones as well. And then, you mentioned the alcohol and the environmental toxins, anything that increases load on the liver. And then I think the last thing that I have here is not expressing emotions, and that's related to Chinese medicine. So when you are in Chinese medicine, the emotion that is associated with the liver is anger, and they say when you are stifling a lot of your emotions, like when you're holding it inside, it blocks the flow of qi, and your liver is responsible for the smooth flow of qi. And so it's when you hold back those emotions, Chinese medicine says it gets stored in the liver and causes congestion there. So I guess anger and frustration can be a symptom of liver congestion, but as well as just not expressing yourself in a healthy way can bog down your liver.
I'm glad you kind of brought that energetic piece up, because I thought about it when you were talking about removing the gallbladder, and how as holistic practitioners we look at the whole body as a holistic model, in the sense there's 4 different bodies, like we have the emotional body, the physical body, the mental body, and the spiritual body. And when you go in and you just remove a gallbladder, in the Western conventional model, you're just removing a gallbladder. And the holistic model, you're influencing so much more of the rest of the body. And so you're tying in liver with anger and these emotions and the smooth flow of qi. The gallbladder specifically is for courage and for moving forward with the energy of the liver. And so you've just removed that out. You're, in a sense, impacting the mental and the emotional body as well. So it's not just a gallbladder. There's so much more to it. And you introduced me to German New Medicine. I'd be curious if you know or have heard anything of what they say about gallbladder and compared to traditional Chinese medicine.
Oh, I haven't looked into that actually. I'm totally going to after this now. But if you're listening and you're curious about what German New Medicine is, it's fascinating, and I highly recommend that you go down that rabbit hole, because it's just a whole new way of looking at the body, and it really bases things off of your emotions govern what is going on in your physiology. So an emotional conflict or some type of emotional trauma will cause the body to either build or break down cells in some area in response. So it's like your body is prepping for or trying to deal with the conflict that is coming up. So it's even an emotional thing will create a physical response in the body. That is unequivocally true. You can know that by, just you wake up in the morning and you think, oh no, I have to pay this bill today, and it sends like adrenaline in your body, like something like this, where you wake up and you think, oh, your emails, or and you have this physical stress response. It's the same thing. So your body will respond physically to emotional inputs, and that's really what that system's all about. And so I don't know what it is specifically with the gallbladder and gallstones, but I'm curious now.
Me too.
Okay, so maybe now we can talk through, we've kind of given people what is the liver, how does it work, what is congestion, what are the things that kind of stuff it up, what are some of the things that we can do as herbalists, or what they can do to start to clear that out and support their livers.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what is the underlying driving factor? So is it alcohol? Is it stress? You have to look at those things kind of foundationally to limit or modulate them a little bit. Obviously, stress is stress. Like we can't just say, oh, I don't want to feel stress anymore, and it goes away. But alcohol can be abstained if you're noticing that's having issues with your liver, or if you're using too much. Pharmaceuticals is a little tricky because you can't just come off pharmaceuticals. Talk with your doctor, talk with our holistic practitioner. You can work side by side together. If you really want to come off your pharmaceuticals, just let your doctor know that's your path. Talk with a holistic practitioner, and you can kind of work together in that. So ultimately, setting the foundation is what's the driving factor. Try to modulate or eliminate that. And then healthy, well-balanced diet, lacking those high fructose corn syrups, glucose, those processed fats, like I mentioned the seed oils, but canola oil should be avoided. Again, it goes back to like the programming that you kind of talked about earlier. But, my generation grew up that butter was bad and margarine was better. And so there's this whole piece of that's still in the consciousness of society, where people think they're doing better by eating margarine, and actually margarine is all the way down to the cellular level, changing our cells to be more rigid and less fluid and taking less. So changing your diet is going to be key. And then, we have the herbals. I won't go to the herbals yet if you have more other foundational stuff.
I want to say one really interesting thing that I learned about seed oils that I learned this 6 years ago, and it will stick with me forever. Biochemically, seed oils, so like the canola oil, the margarine, these hydrogenated oils, biochemically are one step away from being plastic. So they're almost plastic. So it's like when you are seasoning your pan with canola oil, or cooking with vegetable oils and that kind of stuff, you are literally putting plastic in your food, or putting an almost plastic into your food. So that, for me, when I learned that, I was like, wow, that's crazy, and I never want that in my body. So that's I think a really interesting one. And then what else are the cornerstones I have here? So like I said earlier, it's like you can do this as it's a valuable treatment kind of on its own, so as liver support just on its own, or as part of a larger thing. I think some of the functional herbal medicine protocols that include that consider liver support would be improving your metabolism. So if you have something like metabolic syndrome, or even adrenal dysfunction, mitochondrial dysfunction, you get a lot of fatigue, we can support the mitochondria. Generally just improving elimination will be supportive, so making sure that you're having bowel movements, right? The liver is really just part of healthy detoxification. You also need to have your bowels moving. You need to have a healthy microbiome. So if you have dysbiosis, we would do a bowel flora protocol. If you and then of course you need get healthy kidneys, healthy skin, healthy lymphatics, all to release toxins as well. It's not just your liver that is doing your detox. It's a massive part of the transformation, but those also have to be removed somehow. So making sure that your elimination pathways are open. And the lymphatics are a huge part of this. It's like the waters of the body, the trash removal system of the body. Like if you could be packaging up all of your trash, but if your garbage collector doesn't come, you still have a pile of trash. It's just in trash bags. So there's still support with the lymphatics that we can do, and that really, like, there's lymphatic herbs, but a lot of that looks like movement and sweating, and you can use castor oil packs, which will support both the liver and the lymphatics. And then I think the last part that I would say is really super important is getting enough antioxidants. So that can be herbal, but that can be vegetables. It can be, like green tea has tons of good antioxidants. So using that as your morning drink kind of thing. Making sure that you have enough antioxidants to support your cellular health, both in your liver and in the rest of your body, because that will be essential in order to be able to like mobilize things and move them out of the body and be able to protect your cells while you do that. So maybe let's talk about herbs now. I think one of my first go-tos, I think people should know about the bitter category of herbs. These like bitter compounds, I mean, you can probably imagine what that is. It's just, a bitter taste, but this stimulates a whole bunch of functions in the body, including digestive secretion, so it'll support bile flow, and it'll support hydrochloric acid, so it can help you digest better, but it'll also activate your vagus nerve, so helping you get into that rest and digest mode. So lots of bitters that we can use, and then of course I think the main one that I'd start with, that I would say, like, I don't often do blanket recommendations, but I think probably everyone could benefit from milk thistle. It's a pretty safe one and gentle, and it's a really, really, really good place to start. It enhances your glutathione. It's protective for your liver, so it's can help reduce or even reverse that fatty liver that the free radical damage, that's what I'm looking for. The free radical damage that occurs when your phases are out of balance. It's got tons of antioxidants in it. It's a pretty awesome one, and gentle, so it's a good place to start. What are some of your other go-to herbs?
Definitely. Milk thistle is right there with it, and when we run out of it in the clinic, I kind of have been using globe artichoke synonymously as one for milk thistle. At first, we didn't learn it in college, so it's a new one that kind of came through a different book, and so I was like a little timid. I'm like, is it too strong? Some of these other ones that we have on the list, I find them really strong, and I only use them in very certain situations, certain constitutions in people. But globe artichoke is kind of one of those ones where I'm like, this one is pretty safe and it's really protective, helps with lipids in the body and in the liver as well, so it works with the cholesterol and triglycerides and stuff like that. And then just like your standard bitter, so both milk thistle and globe artichoke are bitters, but their main energy or focus is liver, where we have something like Angelica, Arc Angelica, which is mostly just a bitter, and then it has all these other actions in the body, like warming up the body as an expectorant in the lungs. Less affinity for like protecting and supporting liver function as much as it is just a bitter and stimulates the bitter aspect. And one thing one of our teachers said in college, I would wonder if you heard the same thing, but one of the teachers told me that we have bitter receptors all throughout our body, and it's not just the liver or the digestive tract. We have bitter receptors in our heart. They've shown that. So as these molecules go through the body, like, they're actually binding to receptors in our heart, which, I wonder over time with taking bitters how that impact on the heart keeps the body in that rest and digest, or that hits that vagus nerve as well.
Mm-hmm. There's bitter receptors as well. I've done a little bit of research on this in the airway, and bitters actually help to keep the airway open, which is very, very interesting. Unrelated to liver, but bitters are incredible. They have so many uses. Yeah, I would say like Globe Artichoke is one of my favorite. I think it's it's actually got some of the same compounds as milk thistle, so it has this nice like gentle regenerative side to it, but I do find it to be a little bit more bitter. So it's like, I kind of think of like, at the shop you have this a pre-made capsule that's milk thistle and dandelion root, and that the combination is amazing. I had that same patient that I mentioned earlier who had their gallbladder taken out at 19 and has not had good digestion basically ever since. She has a ton, like a long list of symptoms, Lyme disease, a whole bunch of things going on, and we started her on those capsules, and she came back in like a week or two and said that she's having bowel movement, normal bowel movements for the first time in doesn't even know how long. So that combination, and I've actually had other herbalists tell me that they've had patients that have like fully reversed fatty liver with that specific combination of herbs, which I think is just incredibly cool. But I actually also think of as Globe Artichoke as being kind of a bit of a combination of those two, because it's got the regenerative gentle side of milk thistle, but it also has the kind of more bitter pushy side, and it's amazing with detoxing estrogen and just like thinning out that bile, so that it flows a little bit better. And yeah, those are honestly, if I had those three and I didn't have any other herbs, I think I would be okay.
Totally, and guess what? All of those can grow like weeds too. Like, so people that are out, like we have herbalists for a reason, because we have all this extra knowledge. But milk thistle, it's a little hard to harvest, but grows like a weed. Dandelion, everybody knows, grows like a weed. And Globe Artichoke, I mean, once it takes, like the leaves of Globe Artichoke are just massive. Like you would harvest maybe 2 or 3 leaves a year, and that's all you need after you dry it, and you can put it in capsules. I mean, this medicine is abundant and everywhere. It's so simple to just have in your backyard and use daily.
Totally. I started some artichoke seeds a few weeks ago because I wanted in my garden this year.
Cool.
And I have way too many of them. I probably have like 10 of them sprouted, and I was like looking at like what does the grown up plant end up being, so I can plan where I'm going to put it in my garden. And I was like, this thing is a monster. Yeah. It's huge.
Massive. Yeah.
I probably only have space. So I have 10. I probably only have space for 4 of them. And even then, I'm like,
yeah,
I have to compromise taking some stuff out, I think. So, yeah, it's one you can get delicious artichokes from it. Amazing. And 2, like,
yep,
prolific, so you can have your medicine in your garden. And so far my experience of sprouting them and growing them is they are low maintenance and easy. Like they're the ones that I have sprouted that need the least amount of care. They've been, as I've been hardening them off, they're like, yeah, just put me outside. They're totally fine. So they're robust,
yeah,
and easy to grow too. So really awesome liver herbs.
I'm pretty sure they're all, totally sorry, I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure they're all Asteraceae plants too, so they're all the same plant family.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you see, as soon as it starts to sprout, you're like, oh yes, this is a thistle, and it grows like a weed. It's definitely a huge one, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to having it because it's also perennial and it'll be there for ages. So it's like, if you're gonna grow this, definitely pick a spot that you're okay with it being for like the next 5 or so years, because it'll just keep going. So some of maybe our other strong ones that we use, like you alluded to this, some stronger ones that we use only in specific kind of people and constitutions. I'm sure you're alluding to Schizandra, rosemary, those types of herbs. I know there's, so both of those actually work on phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification equally. So if you're one of those people who you just need general support, I think both of these work better in colder kind of constitutions. I find them both to be quite heating and activating. So for these, definitely, if you're going to explore them, start really small doses. And I would even start with the other 3 that we mentioned first, and if you need to go stronger, maybe even work with a herbalist to access these other ones, just because they are super powerful, and I've definitely noticed that they affect the constitution quite heavily. So it's like, you can very clearly have a person who does not get along with schizandra very well, even if it isn't like, it is an amazing herb, and it's it has many amazing uses, but you certainly can aggravate somebody with that herb, and rosemary as well. And yeah, I think the other category that is worth mentioning is the herbs that activate the NRF2 pathway. So this is an innate antioxidant pathway that we have. So when we activate this, we produce our own antioxidants. So rather than getting them from our food, we produce them in our body. And so that's handy because they are they're more reusable when they're produced by our own bodies. When we get them from the food, it's like they donate the 1 electron. That's how antioxidants work. They donate the 1 electron, and then they're kind of spent, and they can actually be a potential free radical afterwards. After they donate electrons, they can become unstable. So when we have our own ones activated in our body can recognizes them and knows them, and so it'll do its antioxidant thing by donating electrons, and then the body will also then kind of rework it into what it's supposed to be, and reproduce that enzyme. So they're like recyclable instead of being like a one-time use. So that's pretty cool. And we use herbs like turmeric, Japanese knotweed, rosemary, like I just mentioned, ginkgo. Broccoli sprouts are a good one here, so you can like add those to your smoothie, and or just eat them in your sandwiches or whatever, in your salads. And garlic's a good detoxifier as well. And yeah, that's kind of just part of the process in terms of enhancing like cellular metabolism, mitochondrial function, and just really fortifying those like cells. So like having protection in your cells against potential free radicals and other like chemicals and damage that can be done. Anything else to add there?
No, I'm glad you added garlic. I thought of it as we were entering this category, and I was like, I didn't add garlic to the list, but totally another amazing liver herb.
Yeah, super. And I mean, so many of these have many uses, right? So like garlic in particular, it's great if you're like a dysbiotic kind of person, because it can help correct your microbiome, help to reduce the populations of bad bacteria. So lots of benefits from that one as well. Okay, I think that's all we've got for you today. So do you have anything else to add in there, David?
Not today.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I think that's everything we got for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast and got some really good value out of it. I hope you are walking away from this thinking, I'm gonna go support my liver and have a good spring. I know just on the energetic side of things, the springtime is really about like getting new projects started and starting anew. And sometimes when we have liver congestion, we can feel a little bit agitated during this time, or we can't move ourselves towards action. Like we kind of know that there's stuff to do, we can't move ourselves towards action. Good sign to get your liver moving, get your energy moving, your chi moving, get your emotions moving, and all of that good stuff. And enjoy the health and vitality that comes from that. So thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you enjoyed this, please give us a like, a subscribe, share it with a friend. Whatever you can do really supports us and helps us and gets our message out there. And it's also, of course, it's encouraging for us to get your feedback and support. So thank you for being here. And if you want to connect with us further, both David and I see clients one-on-one. You can find all of our information below this video, websites, emails, and Instagram handles. It'll all be there. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.